I'm Raghavedra Goud. I'm currently working as an executive director for PharmNxt. Before this, I was the managing director for GE Healthcare Life Sciences, which is transformed into now as a Cytiva. So overall, 2.5 to 3 decades of experience in the biopharma industry. So right from the science to the business leadership is what I've done. So I'll take you through a couple of slides which actually talks about how the global perspective is, and then bring it down to India and how in India we are looking forward for these opportunities and challenges, and then navigating through these challenges and making sure that we stand tall and then we are the leaders in the biopharma space as well. So from a global perspective, as we all have seen, biotechnology is the fastest growing segments in terms of the global healthcare and the life sciences economy. And we all have seen we have all have seen the COVID. And so generally biotechnology, I always say, pre-COVID and post-COVID. Post-COVID is something that has really helped biotechnology to come into the limelight. And today, everybody is looking at biotechnology, everybody is looking at biopharma, everybody is looking at new age therapies for any untoward incident that's going to happen in future. So that's the power of biotechnology. That is what the biotechnology is going to be, and that's the reason it is the fastest growing sector globally. And if we see how this bioeconomy, biotechnology sector is shaping up, so, as per the data, various data that comes out, it says that, this would be anywhere between 3.8 to 3.9 trillion sector by 2030. And there are a lot of data points which actually tells us to believe this big number. And even if you see from India, there are a lot of articles from India also, which talks about saying that by 2035, 40% of the medicines are expected to be the biologics. And that's the power of biologics that we're talking about, whether it is vaccines, whether it is biopharmaceuticals, whether it is the recombinant insulins, or whether it is any of the new age therapies. 40% of the therapeutic molecules would be from the biologics. That's what the data point says. So I think keeping this in view, we can say that this is not just the fastest growing sector, but the answer to many of the problems that we're going to see in terms of the healthcare. Now, moving on to how this is expanding, there is a new word called as a bioeconomy. This not only includes the biotechnology in healthcare, but also it includes the agriculture, it includes the climate, it includes various material that goes in. So overall, it is called as a bioeconomy for a reason. And this sector is expected to be 4.4 to 5 trillion by 30 by 2050. This is expected to be 30 trillion. So in the previous slide, I was talking about the biologics, which is about 3 to 4 trillion. And when you look at the overall bioeconomy and the sector, it is going to be almost like 30 trillion by 2050. And this clearly tells us this is not just a sector which is confined to the research or confined to the scientific sector, but more towards the industry, more towards the manufacturing, more towards the cross-functional aspects this bioeconomy or the biotechnology sector is going to be in. So that's the reason we say it is not just the biotechnologies that is going to take over the world, but it is the bioeconomy which is going to take over the world, which moves from a 4.5 to 5 trillion to almost a 30 trillion economy by 2050. And that's the reason this is a fastest growing sector, and this is where everybody is looking at, not just India, but every other country is looking at this sector as one of the growth driving sectors. Now, moving on to the biosimilar space, as we know, biosimilars are nothing but I would say the copycats of the originated drug. So, for example, whether you talk about the rituximab, whether you talk about the nimulizumab, or whether you talk about the Keytrudas, these are the biosimilars. So there is this original drug, and that has been made in terms of the low cost material, which actually has the same potential as the original, but it is just it has the same similar properties, but it is just that it is being copied, and then it is being produced in the low economy countries. So when you look at the opportunities for the biosimilar and biologics, as per the McKinsey, this talks about anywhere between 74 to 75 billion billion dollars economy by 2030, and more so in India. If you see, as per again the Press Information Bureau, they say that around $300 billion worth patents are going to be expired by 2030. And when you say patents are going to expire by 2030, this means that people have already started working on that in that space, because obviously it takes 2 to 3 years to develop a drug and then get into the regulatory, get into the approval. So it would take about 3 to 4 years. So that's the reason you see, I would say, a mad rush in terms of the drivers. I would say there's a mad rush towards getting into the biosimilars, biologics, because of one of the reasons for that is there are many drugs, many biosimilars which are getting out of the patent by 2030. And as we know, Keytruda, which is one of the largest selling drug biosimilar in the world, is getting out of the patent. And now today every company in India is talking about this particular drug, and this is going to be a huge, huge game changer for the people who are getting into the biosimilars. And that's the reason we say, biotech and biopharma sector in India is also booming, because every company is talking about not less than 14 to 15 biosimilar molecules, and they're not just for India, but they want to be the global exporters. They already have the EMEA approval. Some of them already have the EMEA approval. Some of them already have the FDA approvals. So when they have these kind of approvals, this clearly means that they are targeting global economy. And of course, India economy is also going to boom because of the opportunity that we foresee because of the expiry of the patents for some of these blockbusters. Now, moving to India, like I've said, the bioeconomy or the biotechnology sector is booming in India as well. As we have seen, various reports suggest that 4.25% of the GDP comes from the biology sector, and government is targeting to take this economy to $300 billion. And we have seen this. So it was 1.4 in 2014. 2014 it was 1.4 or 1.5 billion, and today we are talking about 116. And this is targeted to move to 2030. This is targeted to move 300 by 2030. So that's the power, that's the pace at which the government is moving or the industry is moving. So there is this huge opportunities. This is one of the emerging sectors in India. And there is a reason for it. There is a reason that there are a lot of opportunities that are available, and that's where every company is want to move into this. And if you see the phase, there are original biosimilar companies, and then there are diversified biosimilar companies in India. So, for example, uh, all the big pharmaceutical companies, whether you talk about Dr. Reddy's, whether you talk about Sun Pharma, whether you talk about Intas, whether you talk about or Arabindo or Hetero, they were all the core pharmaceutical companies which are actually contributing to pharma sector. They were diversified. They have diversified into the biology. They have diversified into the biopharma. Each one of them have established a huge, huge biomanufacturing plants. They want to cater to not just India but globally. So this clearly tells how the India is emerging and playing its role in terms of expanding its pharma to the biopharma and the biologics. And coming to the core biologics companies like Serum or Biocons, who we all know that serums of the world, or the Bharat Biotechs of the world, or biological Evans, these contribute to 60% of the vaccines globally. And then similar is going to be the pace, similar is going to be the outlook, similar is going to be the what we call as the this is exactly what we are going to see in the biosimilar space as well. When we contribute about 60% of the world's vaccines, and there is the day is not very far when we would say that we are contributing similar percentage in terms of the biologics as well. And there are reasons to believe it. Like I've said, most of the pharma companies are diversified into the biotechnology, biopharmaceutical companies. Not just this, but if you see, the CDMO space, there are various reasons or various reasons to believe that India is again going to be one of the big CDMO players. So contract manufacturing centers. So there are these global players who want to look at India for their low cost manufacturing. So pharmaceutical companies diversifying into biopharma, the CDMO space getting big. And also the vaccines, there are multiple players who are coming into not just the traditional vaccines, but also the new age or the biotechnology or the recombinant vaccine. So overall, we would say India is emerging in the global biotech space as well. And if you come to the innovation side, we all know, just go by the data points. In 2014, there were about 5,000 biotech startups, or less than 5,000 biotech startups, which were actually into the discovery innovation space. But with the help of with the way the policies are driven, with the way the funding is coming, there are a couple of agencies, especially the BIRACs or the Nidhi Prayas, or couple of agencies which are encouraging the innovation space in India. So today, you see there are about 12,000, approximately about 11,000 to 12,000 biotech startups, which are actually working on innovation, which are working on discovery, which are working on new therapeutics as well. So overall, it is not just the biosimilars, but also the new drug space, especially the antigen drug conjugates, the CAR T therapies, the stem cell therapies, the regenerative medicines. So I think this is the power of biotechnology, and this is the outlook of the sector in India as well. Now we've seen this year there is almost 10,000 crores that has been allocated for this sector, which has been called as a biopharma Shakti. And the reason for that is what has been observed is that you need places for manufacturing, you need places, you need the institutes to do preclinical, clinical, and the testing. You also need, after the testing, you need some of those manufacturing centers. So this 10,000 crores has been allocated to create hubs in various part of the country, which would be useful for, which can cater to the preclinical, clinical phases. And many NIPERs have been identified where they would be getting additional funding, where there are a couple of CROs, clinical research organizations, government-led clinical research organizations, where they want to fund, where there would be this preclinical, clinical research going on. And at the same time, the biomanufacturing centers, Bio E3 policies, again, very unique policy which the government has brought in. There are hundreds of crores of money that has been allocated, especially for biotechnology, for bioeconomy, and the environment and employment. So this is a sector where they want to focus on creating a lot of biotechnology hubs, and they're ready to fund to a tune of almost like 100 crores if you have the project for the biomanufacturing space. So overall, there is a huge policy support as well. Unless until there is a policy support, nothing can be moved. That's what we all believe. So since there is a very encouraging policy support from the government in terms of the allocation of money, and also in terms of speeding up the approval. So this is something that we all have to be proud that government looks at this sector as one of the emerging sector. There is this policy framework, there is this funds that have been allocated, and there is this intent of making India the biosimilar hub going forward. And we also have seen how the National Biopharma Mission and the DBT BIRAC support has helped India in shaping up what it was in early 2014, 2015 versus what it is in 2026. Now, moving on to the overall, like I've said, a biopharma mission, they have identified as 14 or, anywhere between 11 to 21 shared infrastructure facilities where they want to, where they want to infuse funds and create a space for the people to work, create a space for the people to manufacture, for the innovators or for the entrepreneurs to use this without a huge investments. They wanted to make use of these facilities so that they can be used in terms of scaling up, what we call as a startup to scale up facilities. That's what the government is focusing on. Now, moving on to this sector, as we all know, biotechnology or biopharma industry is a very capital intensive sector, and that's where we as PharmNxt come into the play. We are one of the fastest growing biotech companies in the world, in India especially, and obviously, in this space, we are the first one to get into this space where we are trying to make single-use consumables, assemblies, manifolds, the chromatography skids, where we are competing with the global players. And the reason for this is today, if you see, maybe a couple of years back, if you see, 75, in fact, I would say 95 to 98% of the ingredients or the raw material that goes into the biopharmaceutical sector is imported. When we talk about Chandrayaan, when we talk about, any of these things, out of any component that went into the Chandrayaan was, indigenous, was made in India. But unfortunately, in biopharma sector, it's the other way. 95% of the raw material is still imported. So to break that monopoly, so we've started this company. This was started in 2017, and today, we cater to 14 countries from India, and we supply to all the major companies in the world. That's the power of India, and we have got amazing support from the government, amazing support in terms of the policies, in terms of encouragement to be a company that can actually fight the global giants and create the self-sustenance in India. And that's what we are looking at: create the self-sustenance, reduce the dependency on multinationals, and bring in the low-cost solutions so that every person in India will be in a position to take the drugs that are made in India, not just because biosimilars are expensive. Unlike the small molecules, biosimilars are expensive. For example, the monoclonal antibody treatment would cost you in runs in lakhs. But when we change the components that goes in, obviously the prices would come down, and that's the motto of starting the PharmNxt. And that's where we are trying to see if we can solve this puzzle of making those low cost consumables, low cost solutions for the biopharma space. And this can be utilized by not just India but globally, and bring down the cost. And coming into the new age therapies like the CAR Ts, or the ADCs, or the CAR NK cells, or the stem cells, we cater to those sectors as well, with the similar thoughts that we should be in a position to supply the low cost material. Or when I say low cost, this doesn't mean that we are compromising on the quality. This is a low cost consumables is what we're supplying to all the new sectors, new age therapeutic companies. And the overall idea is, can we make India a global hub for biopharmaceutical, biopharmaceutical hub. And as I've said, opportunities are immense, and there is a clear policy, there is a clear market that India can cater to. And globally, this is one of the fastest growing sectors. And since we have very good policies, great encouragement from the government, and also there is this huge support. So I would say, when we have a policy support, manufacturing infrastructure, and the competence and capability in the industry, the outlook is very bright. And I would say this is something that we all have to look for. And the day is not very far. Like we say, India is the pharmacy of the world. The day is not very far when we all will say India is not just the pharmacy of the world, but also the global hub for biopharma, biopharmaceuticals, and the new age therapies. And thank you. This is my last slide, and thanks for giving this opportunity to present on the outlook of the industry globally, and not just in India, but globally as well. Thanks, everyone.